فعلا أيها الإخوة الشعب العربي شعب واحد والجيش العربي جيش واحد ولن يفرق بيننا الاستعمار أو أعوان الاستعمار.
The 1967 Six-Day War is referred to by Arabs as the Naksa, the setback. It was a humiliating defeat for Arab powers and a major victory for Israel. It marked the beginning of 50 years of occupation of Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza and the Golan Heights in Syria, radically reshaping the destiny of the Middle East. On May 13, 1967, Soviet intelligence informed Egypt that Israeli forces were building up near the Syrian border. The following day, the symbol of Arab nationalism, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, ordered 130,000 Egyptian troops to move into the Sinai Peninsula along Israel's borders. The intent was to prevent an invasion of Syria, rather than to attack Israel. As tensions escalated on May 16, Nasser ordered the withdrawal of UN peacekeeping forces from Sinai. 6 days later, the Egyptian president closed the Taran Straits, blocking ships from entering Israel's port of Eilat. Confident of their military superiority, Egyptian and Arabs celebrated Abdel Nasser's actions. What they didn't know was that Israel's army was better equipped and ready for war. In Israel, the media compared the Arabs to the Nazis, triggering memories of the Holocaust and fueling anti-Nasser sentiments. Fearing war, US President Lyndon Johnson warned both sides not to be the first to strike. The Egyptian-led Arab powers, fearing a US invasion, stood down. To their surprise, on June 5th at 7:45 a.m., the well-rehearsed Israeli aerial assault Operation Focus kicked off. By midday on June 5th, 200 Israeli jets had struck 18 Egyptian airfields, destroying more than 80% of the country's air force, before they even managed to get off the ground. However, Cairo made fake announcements claiming an Egyptian victory to rally its Arab neighbors to join the war effort. Syria, Jordan, and Iraq followed suit and started deploying their air forces to strike Israeli targets. But on the same day, Israel quickly destroyed all of their airfields as well, achieving complete air superiority. Despite not having any air support, the Egyptian soldiers held their defenses in Sinai against the Israeli incursion. Meanwhile, Jordan, under the leadership of King Hussein, had started a small offensive and had reached the hills overlooking southern Jerusalem. But by June 6th, Egyptian Field Marshal Abdel Hakim Amir, having witnessed the might of Israel's air force, ordered the full retreat of Egypt's army from Sinai. Jordan, realizing the severity of Egypt's humiliating retreat, decided to pull back from its positions after minor clashes with the Israelis. By Wednesday, June 7th, Israel had successfully taken over the Jordanian-administered East Jerusalem and West Bank. By the fourth day of the war, Israel had reached the Suez Canal, with full control of the Egyptian-administered Gaza Strip and the entire Sinai Peninsula. Having demolished the Jordanian and Egyptian armies, Syria was now on its own. On the fifth day of the war, Israel ascended the strategic Golan Heights. Syrian soldiers fought the Israeli forces. However, similar to their Egyptian allies, they were let down by the decisions of their leaders. Hafez al-Assad, then defense minister, accepted a UN ceasefire, undermining the ongoing military resistance. By the sixth day of the war, Israel accepted the UN ceasefire as well. But the damage had been done, and the Middle East would never be the same. Israel tripled in size. Arab armies and nationalism were crippled as a broken Egyptian president tried to resign in shame.
فإنني على استعداد لتحمل المسؤولية كلها، ولقد اتخذت قرارا أريدكم جميعا أن تساعدوني عليه. لقد قررت أن أتنحى تماما ونهائيا عن أي منصب رسمي وأي دور سياسي، وأن أعود إلى صفوف الجماهير وأدي واجبي معها كأي مواطن آخر.
Israel had proved its superiority and its army created a mythical aura, propelled by Arab leaders trying to hide their failures. Israel had gained administration of 1 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Israeli settlements in the West Bank were built with more settlements in Egypt's Sinai and Syria's Golan Heights also under construction. Israel, taking advantage of Arab weakness, was not willing to give up its gains, using religious justification for their occupation of the lands. With its newfound power, Israel refused to comply with the international community. Palestinians had realized Arab powers could not protect them and went on to create their own national liberation movements that also failed to achieve their desired goal. Ultimately, the Six-Day War scarred the Arab psyche, paving the way for an overzealous Israeli leadership. And to this day, border issues remain unresolved.